that we got to talk about is the Baltimore Ravens versus the Tennessee Titans. So this game, Blake and I have both been very vocal on defending Lamar Jackson. We both think he's a top 10 or maybe like top 7 quarterback. We both think he's excellent, and we both think that the narrative on him choking in the playoffs and all of that is absolutely garbage. And so I think this is a game that he's going to get an opportunity to rectify it. There's a lot of underlying storylines, the fact that they lost to Tennessee last year, the fact that they already lost to Tennessee in the regular season this year. But Baltimore is super hot. Lamar is playing MVP level football. So Blake, what do you think is going to happen? How do you think this game is going to go down? What do you see with this?
Yeah, so for me, I'm thinking that the Ravens with Lamar Jackson are going to get their first he'll get his first playoff win, basically. And it's mainly due to their offense has been clicking as of recently. I know they haven't played the best defenses, but the Titans' defense is actually terrible. They have the worst defense in the playoffs right now. And me and you were really high on this team, right? We knew how good their offense was, probably a top 5 unit. They're top 5 in scoring. And we kind of thought, no way this defense can get worse. I mean, we talked about it earlier in the year. Like, they don't have any semblance of a pass rush. And it hasn't gotten better. It's probably gotten worse, their defense.
We were expecting it to get better. That was always why we were high on Tennessee.
Yeah. I'm pretty anti-Titans after just seeing their defense over the last few weeks. You talk about the Bengals game. Without Joe Burrow, the Bengals dropped over 30 points on the Titans. That just should simply not happen for a playoff caliber team.
That was on the Texans. They beat the Titans with Joe Burrow. They beat the Titans with Joe Burrow, yeah.
Okay, it was with Joe Burrow, sorry. But still, I'm just not I just can't trust this defense anymore. I've seen what they've done the last few weeks. Not for me. And I think Lamar's going to get his first win. He's been playing better. J.K. Dobbins is finally getting all the carries, which is what should happen. As much as I love Mark Ingram and Justice Hill and Gus Bus Edwards, feed the man you got in the second round. And they have been. And I think that'll be the difference is their running game will be nice. Their defense is not anything like it was last year. And I think they're going to come away with a victory. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm with you on Tennessee. I think the loss of Dean Pease has really hurt their defense. I think his creativity was able to cover up for the fact that they had similar personnel last year. I think they tried to address their pass rush with the late signing of Jadeveon Clowney, and him getting injured really did not solve that problem. I mean, I think Jeffrey Simmons, we've done a video on him before. I think he's slowed down a bit, but I still think he's a really excellent player inside. I think their linebackers are okay, and Jayon Brown and Rashaan Evans. And I don't mind their secondary players on paper. Like, Adoree Jackson is fine. Desmond King is pretty good. And the safety tandem Byard is pretty to very good. And Vaccaro's okay. But they just cannot seem to stop a nosebleed.
No.
They're struggling on defense. They're really struggling. And it really stinks because I think their offense is even better than last year. They have 2 legit receivers. It's kind of like Minnesota's offense last year. They got Ryan Tannehill, who's a top 10 type quarterback. Excellent player, especially within this offense. They have a really strong running game built around 2 or 3 runs with Derrick Henry, who's really special. I mean, 2,000 rushing yards. Are there any more superlatives that can be used to describe him? And finally, you have this excellent pass game built off of play action with A.J. Brown, who's awesome, and Corey Davis, who's one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL. So in theory, Tennessee is so good, but I'm going to take Baltimore. And the reason I'm going to take Baltimore is because of Lamar Jackson. I don't think this Titans defense has any chance of stopping Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's playing phenomenal. The run game for the Baltimore Ravens is back to being what it was in his MVP season. And you talked about J.K. Dobbins. I feel like their scheme is Greg Roman is cooking it up in the run game again. And we've talked so much about how the Baltimore Ravens wide receivers aren't that good. And that's why it's hard for Lamar Jackson to throw the ball. And it is a valid reason, but it feels like Lamar is making it work in spite of that. Hollywood Brown is still dropping touchdowns for them, but Lamar Jackson is dropping dimes when it counts. He does a really good job within the pocket, and he knows when to run and create plays off schedule. So for those reasons, I'm going to take the Baltimore Ravens. I do think their defense is a bad matchup for the Tennessee Titans offense. I don't think they have enough size inside, but I think they'll play man coverage on those two receivers with Humphrey, who I think is a top 3 corner, and Marcus Peters, who's really good. And they're just going to load the box similar to what the Packers did and sell out to stop Henry. And as long as they're willing to tackle and willing to hit, I think that Baltimore's got a really good shot. And hopefully we can finally put to rest the Lamar can't win a big game narrative.
And along with that, so we kind of saw what happened with the Packers and what they did. And what their scheme basically was is in the first half, they would just put 5 or 6 D linemen, and they'd have 2 linebackers and only 4 dudes in the secondary. And they basically were daring them to pass. Now, this Titans roster, their O-line is really good at run blocking, but in the pass blocking, like just simply like just dropping back, no play action, it's really not all that great. And I think we saw what happened in that game when, you know, they would try to do the drop back passing because they couldn't really run that efficiently. Now, I say that efficiently, they still averaged 4 yards a carry. Henry still had 98 yards, which is good by all accounts, right?
Yeah.
But they really weren't able to like build a strong play action off of their running. And
they weren't able to dictate terms with their run game, which was the big deal.
And it hurt that they, you know, got down to somewhat of an early loss, right? So they were feeling more forced to pass, but their line really wasn't holding up much. And so the Packers have a really good secondary, which is, we haven't been able to say that in probably 10 years. But their secondary is good, and the Ravens secondary is also really good. So if they're able to, you know, have only 4 or 5 D-backs, I really think they can slow down this offense. And I know we've seen Henry kill them time and time again. I hope it'll be different this time. I want to see Lamar get a win. I want to see him deeper into the playoffs. And I'm kind of sick and tired of watching this Titans defense. So I'm really hoping the Ravens win.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably cheering for Tennessee. I don't know, for whatever reason, I'm kind of attached to the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
But I think Baltimore is going to win. And I think the big thing is what you brought up with the Packers, right? The Packers game plan is, I think, right on. The Packers are very similar in terms of their personnel to the Baltimore Ravens, except they're actually worse in their front seven. They don't have a Calais Campbell and a Brandon Williams who are really big and on their day can dominate up front. They just have one Kenny Clark, and then Zadarius Smith, Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary's pretty good against the run. And then Zadarius Smith is their pass rusher. I mean, the Ravens also have Yannick Ngakoue and Matt Judon. So theoretically, their front seven should be better. And then their secondary is similar to the Packers in the sense that Chuck Clark is a very solid player, just like Adrian Amos is a very solid, good player. And then Deshaun Elliott can be good in certain situations, just like in certain situations, Darnell Savage in certain roles within their defense does a phenomenal job. And then you add to the fact that they both have 2 corners. The Baltimore Ravens have a lockdown corner, just like the Packers do with Jair Alexander and Marlon Humphrey. So the game plan should be similar, and I expect it to yield similar results, though I think Ryan Tannehill will play a much better game than what he did against the Packers.
Yeah, that we can say that too, is this game was played in the snow, and you could tell Tannehill just seemed kind of uncomfortable.
Throwing the ball in the snow. Yeah.
You know, it'll be exciting to see, though. It is played in Tennessee this time, so they're not going to have snow. At least I don't believe so. But if they can follow the same script, their defense should be able to hold up enough for like Lamar and co to figure it out. And
right,
you know how we mentioned that the Titans have a pretty good secondary, right?
Yeah.
Well, your good secondary is not going to be able to, you know, pass defend for 8 seconds. And that's pretty much what it's been like for their secondary, as they can really not create any sort of pass rush. And if we remember last year too, Jarrell Casey, I mean, that loss was just massive for them.
Right.
So he's on the Broncos now. They traded like a 6th rounder to get him. Pretty good trade for them. But yeah, their pass rush is, it's hard to watch, man.
Yeah, ultimately, I think that all Baltimore's defense needs to do is get 2 or 3 stops, because I don't have confidence in the Titans defense being able to get stop after stop against Lamar. And ultimately, that's why I think both of us like Baltimore in this game.